Hi, my name is Jeff Bandy. I'm the City Assessor for the City of Lynchburg. It's a reassessment year, and I understand folks have a lot of questions about the assessment process. I'm here to help you understand how it works, and there are some questions that the public has asked of me, and I'm here to answer those. So tune in, here it comes.
What is a real estate tax assessment?
The real estate assessment is really a process. Most of it's mandated by state code. Title 58.1, Chapter 32 goes into it in detail. You can go online and look at that. But for the City of Lynchburg, it mandates that every 2 years we revalue. And there's a colloquial term called ad valorem, which means according to value. And the markets are really dynamic, so usually we have to go out every 2 years to make sure we're accurately reflecting what the market value of the properties are at that time. And there's lots of things that go on into that, from supply and demand side. As you all know, there's a lot of demand and not enough housing out there for folks, so that's run the price up. There's a supply chain issues that run prices up for the materials, and there's a labor shortage. It's also run prices up for construction. So all these things, in the mix, create a dynamic. And how we find out what's really going on in the market is by looking at the actual individual sales in each neighborhood. So those sales guide us as to what people perceive as the value for a given house in a neighborhood. And that's the biggest part of the assessment process. We'll get into some other questions later that kind of feed on it, but that's the biggest element of the reevaluation process.
What is the tax rate?
Okay, the tax rate is actually set by City Council. Each year, they look at the fiscal needs of the city, they look at the budget the city manager presents, and based on that guides them as to what the actual levy, the rate is. I consider it's a levy, a dollar per hundred or $1.11 per hundred, whatever that would be, that's the rate. But it's up to them to determine what that rate is.
How is the tax rate determined? Okay,
this is a very involved question, the tax rate, how it's set. I'm really out of the picture entirely on this. This is totally the purview of the City Council, the folks you elected. They're going to look at a budget that the city manager presents to them. At the end of the day, they're going to critique it, look at what they think is reasonable, and they're going to keep what they think is reasonable, remove what they don't like, and at the end of the day, they must provide a balanced budget. So after they determine through public discourse and discussion on numerous meetings what the actual budget is going to be for the next fiscal year, then that determines how much money they need. Then they'll set the rate to determine how much money they need from real estate to cover the total cost.
How does tax assessment work?
Okay, great question about the assessment process. We value using three methods: the cost approach, the sales comparison approach, and the income approach. For single-family homes, typically we stick with a sales comparison approach. It's very much like how when you bought the home, you got a fee appraisal for the property to indicate the value is reasonable. We do the same thing, but we do it instead of an individual property, we value in mass. And at the end of the day, we're still looking at the same things the fee appraiser is looking at. We're looking at the actual sales of like properties in your neighborhood to guide us for the value for your home. So actually, it's your neighbors that sell their homes that tell us and inform us about what the values are in your neighborhood.
Will the tax assessor come into my home?
All right, generally, we do not go into your home. We typically try to inspect about 20% of the properties, meaning we get in front of the house, look at your house from the street in any given year. And we don't go into your home typically unless there's a permit or there's some kind of real estate rehab abatement program that requires us to do a physical inspection. If you pull a permit, we may go into your home, but otherwise we're going to make some assumptions about the condition of your home, just looking from the outside and the permit activity. And that's the big important part about you checking your records. Like, we have a product called Parcel Viewer that's on our website, and that's where you can look up your address and look up all the details in your home. And you can kind of cross-check us and see if what we have is correct. But the short answer is no, we do not go in your home. The only time we would go in your home is if you've filed an appeal on the assessment, and we need to come inspect it to determine the true interior condition of the home.
Will a new tax assessment affect my homeowner's insurance?
Okay, good question. Actually, the homeowner's insurance is kind of a totally different thing. It really doesn't follow the assessment. Insurance is more about the replacement cost on the property, and what's driving the change there is just the cost of replacing the house new. So the assessment, if your assessment goes up, that's probably going to be indicative that costs are going up for construction, but that's not a direct relationship because your house is a depreciated value, whereas the insurance folks are trying to figure out what it costs to replace it, like a new home. So it's a different type of valuation.
What if I don't agree with the assessment?
Okay, there are three main reasons that give you good standing for asking for a change in assessment or a review of your assessment. One is that you've looked at the records and you see a factual error. That's definitely a reason for us to look at your assessment. If there's a major discrepancy in the data, then chances are we would adjust the value. The second is that your assessment is more than what you think market value is. That's definitely something we would want to come out and look at the house because that's not what we're here for. We're to value 100% of market value, but not more. And the third is, even though you may agree with the assessment, you find that we have not treated similar homes to yours in the same fashion. And that's called equalization. So if we haven't treated a similar home, we haven't valued it similar to yours, if it's all else being the same, then that's another basis for a request for review. So those are three main reasons that you would want to request a review of assessment, and we're happy to help you with that.
Where can I find the sales information for my neighborhood? That way I can compare it to the value on my assessment notice.
Okay, this is a really good question. I've alluded to some of the resources earlier. The biggest product we have out there is called Parcel Viewer. So when you go to our landing page, you go to lynchburgva.gov, the city assessor, and the landing page for the assessment, there will be a link to Parcel Viewer. And that's where you go in and you look up the address of your property, and then there's a button that shows neighborhood sales. You can push that button and it'll show you all the sales in your neighborhood that were looked at. If you'd like to drill down even further, there's a button at the top of the page that shows advanced search options. You can push that and you can actually download all those sales into an Excel file and sort it and dice it and slice it and do some really in-depth analysis on your own. So to a large degree, that's how we come up with the values. We look at those other sales in the neighborhood and compare to your home. So those are great resources for you.
How are property valued for a real estate assessment?
We're mandated by the state to value at 100% of market value. So we're going to look at the universal properties that sales that happened over the last 2 years to estimate in your neighborhood, to estimate what the value of your property is by using those sales to guide us.
What is the definition of market value?
Market value is described as an arm's length transaction. What I mean by that is that the property is typically listed with an MLS. It's exposed to the market so that anybody would know about it. The seller or the buyer are not under any duress. They're just selling the property because they've decided to sell it. We wouldn't look at a sale like for related family selling your property to your son or something like that as a valid sale. What we're looking for when we say market value is what a typical buyer would have to pay for the property when it's exposed to the market for a reasonable amount of time. That's what we consider market value. Thanks so much for the opportunity for me to talk to you about the assessment process, and I really appreciate the questions. I'm sure I haven't covered everything, but we're always here. Just give us a call or email us, and we're happy to answer any questions you have. Thanks so much.